What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and I have some potentially brutal news for fans of the Star Wars franchise, for, well, fans of just hope in general, as for months it's been speculated that Kathleen Kennedy would be on the way out at Disney, given her absolute failure, plummeting sales toys for the Star Wars franchise, and her Hail Mary pass at necroing a 1,000-year-old actor to make an Indiana Jones movie nobody asked for and nobody wanted. But a brand new rumor says that Disney is set to renew Kathleen Kennedy's contract as president of Lucasfilm, which is absolutely heartbreaking. I really do sympathize with fans of Star Wars out there and people that had hope. I really sincerely hope that this rumor is incorrect, but it doesn't look great. I suppose if you're looking to view particular content, though, in a anonymous way that you would like to view particular content, or if you'd like to make sure you remain anonymous and you don't want your data sold to big tech, big companies like Disney, you should be using a VPN. The one I use is private internet access. And if you don't currently have a VPN, they have a massive discount that's ending soon, only available if you use my link in the description below or in the pinned comment. So after this video, if you don't have a VPN, make sure you get private internet access. It protects you, it supports the channel, everybody wins. The rumor comes from Mikey Sutton at Geekosity. He states, quote, sources indicate that there were never any discussions to fire Kathleen Kennedy, despite rampant online speculation and rumors. I guess I'm not surprised to hear that, given, just what a colossal failure it would take to remove a strong, independent woman who don't need no man like Kathleen Kennedy. Even though inexplicably she lost money on a Star Wars film, which I would have thought was impossible. She had the multiple director debacle that was The Last Jedi. She had what was also another debacle in The Rise of Skywalker. Essentially, the Star Wars franchise under the Mouse House has been an absolute disaster, with the tiny exception of The Mandalorian, which in and of itself still couldn't avoid controversy in the whole Gina Carano situation. Sutton even quoted one source who told him, quote, it's not like Kathleen Kennedy wrote or directed any of those films. In Disney's minds, they brought in billions to their bank accounts. Another source told Sutton Kathleen Kennedy won't be Lucasfilm's president at this point, only if she decides to retire. Disney strongly believes she will continue guiding Star Wars to greater heights. The source also added, she will have the power she's always had. Now, there's been a lot of rumors around whether or not she would be removed and have somebody like Kevin Feige take over. But that always seemed really far-fetched to me, given that Kevin Feige has his plate absolutely overflowing with terrible Phase 4 Marvel films. The rumor is not out of left field. Current CEO Bob Chapek has lavished praise on Kathleen Kennedy for her leadership at Lucasfilm. Back in March, Chapek appeared at a virtual conference hosted by Morgan Stanley, where he was asked by Morgan Stanley's Ben Swinburne, what are you guys doing? Why are you and Kevin and the team what are you doing to make sure Marvel continues to thrive, particularly as you weave in Disney Plus, blah, blah, blah. In response to the question about Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige, Chapek answered by praising Kennedy. I would say the situation is the same for Marvel it is for Lucas. And it goes to speak to the talent of not only Kevin and his team, but Kathleen Kennedy and her team over at Lucas. We are really fortunate to have both groups led by stellar creative talent, Chapek added. Now, if you were thinking that Bob Chapek was going to criticize Kathleen Kennedy publicly, obviously that wasn't going to happen. So I suppose there really isn't any surprise here that he said something nice about her. But I know a lot of the Star Wars faithful had been hoping that there would be some change at the leadership position, simply because in many ways the buck stops with Kathleen Kennedy. And I don't think even diehard fans of, let's say, The Last Jedi I think that they would, if they were going to have a good faith conversation, would have to admit that while, yes, Star Wars or Disney is making money with Star Wars, I'm not exactly impressed by that. I mean, obviously, they're making money with Star Wars. It's a $1 billion franchise of which they paid handsomely for and had a massive, already built-in audience. With a platform that is Disney Plus and the huge success of The Mandalorian, I would argue that The Mandalorian is more like the peanut in the turd than anything else. They got lucky with it, to be honest with you. And that's mostly because of the involvement of people like Filoni, not Kathleen Kennedy. Later in his response, Chapek showered more praise on Kennedy and Feige. That's where they're at their best, managing that mythology, so there are little pieces here and there that they dribble and they all connect. It's really amazing. Geniuses. He went on to call Kennedy an absolute treasure, he said. Well, just like Kevin and Kathy and Sean at the studio, Jimmy, Dana, Peter, and John are absolute treasures for us from a creative standpoint, driving this machine, but giving you the type of content that you saw at the investor conference. I would argue that, the type of content we're getting out of Star Wars is more of a spitball formula than it is of, one of great genius and foresight. Under Kennedy's leadership, Star Wars has seen its box office hauls massively decline. As reported by The Numbers, A Force Awakens grossed $2.065 billion worldwide. It earned $936 million at the domestic. Followed its theatrical run, earned $121 million in domestic video sales. The Last Jedi earned just $1.3 billion worldwide, also a ginormous number. Its domestic gross fell to $620 million, losing $300 million in sales in the U.S. The Rise of Skywalker only grossed $1 billion, which again, yes, it's $1 billion. It's still a absolutely gigantic amount of money, but it's down 50% from The Force Awakens. The domestic take dropped to just $500 million. Its domestic video sales also plummeted to just $60 million, where they had $190 million on Force Awakens. Kennedy also oversaw the first Star Wars box office disaster with Solo: A Star Wars Story. The film only earned $393 million at a global box office and $213 million at the domestic. Its domestic video sales were $56 million. The film had a production budget of $275 million. So it's safe to say that they lost $200 million plus on that film. The other major picture released under Kennedy was Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, by the way, which I liked. The film grossed $1 billion in the box office, $532 million in the domestic box office. Sutton claims an insider argued that the original trilogy series sequels, 80s Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and it couldn't top the 1977's initial Star Wars either. That's certainly true. The original film, Star Wars film, made $775 million at the global box office and $460 million, and that's a huge number considering it's 1977. I don't know what that would be adjusted with inflation, but certainly over close to $2 billion, I imagine. In contrast, the decline between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi was 35%. The decline between the original Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back was 29%, and the decline between the original and Return of the Jedi was 38%. In contrast, The Force Awakens, it was 35.5%, so significantly higher, and it was over 48% between The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. So under Disney's leadership, under Kathleen Kennedy's genius leadership, certainly one could argue that it's dropping off faster, but these are still really, really strong numbers, I would imagine, for Disney, who probably has already made their money back. Kennedy has overseen a massive decline in Star Wars toy sales during her time as president of Lucasfilm also. In fact, Diamond Select Toys president Chuck Teixeira claimed there wasn't a lot of demand for sequel trilogy toys. I will say, from what we've seen, the sales on the products from 7 and 8 were not good. When pressed on why they weren't more sequel trilogy toys, he said, as I mentioned before, we're working on some, but I have to ask, are you sure there's a lot of demand for those, quote, very requested characters? That's also part of the new sequel trilogy, as we have many characters that just really are not that inspiring. Obviously, everyone knows about Rose Tico, and Rey, which is kind of just a blah character. They added, we as yet have not seen enough fans that would want to buy a bust have that personal affection for some of these new characters that makes sense to justify going into production. But we're sure we're watching it, and perhaps as more time passes, fan affection for those characters will grow. Probably not. The Mandalorian's probably selling pretty well, but a lot of the characters from the recent sequel trilogy just people don't connect with. Obviously, Grogu, Baby Yoda, selling very, very well. Mandalorian probably selling very, very well. But the characters from the Disney series, I don't think they sold a lot of Kylo Ren dolls, and that's not really Adam Driver's fault. It's disappointing to hear that they apparently aren't even considering any replacement here. But I think Disney seems more in the market of diversity and inclusion and all this stuff than necessarily making great films. That isn't to say that the two things are mutually exclusive. It just seems like Disney can't seem to put them in the same category. They can't seem to put the same emphasis on both. I don't think I don't see how this is a positive thing for Disney at all. And this is a stark change from late July when we were already talking about Kathleen Kennedy leaving due to Bob Chapek's rumored Disney executive contract change. So it's pretty unfortunate if this is the case. More bad news for Star Wars fans. Sorry to be the bearer of it. I still hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.